or ask them. Paul's now writing to Timothy from prison. He's reminded Timothy of his mentorship, and now he's going to he prays for Timothy night and day. This is verse 3. He says, I thank God whom I serve, as did my ancestors' conscience. Watch this. As I remember you constantly in my prayers, night and day. It's an interesting sentence structure. He starts with, hey, I thank God whom I serve. My ancestors served the same God. I have this clear conscience. But then he, dude, I pray for you every single day and every single evening. If you've been around faith for a while and kind of dabbled with some early church practices, you may have heard of a thing called the divine hours. If you're unfamiliar with the divine hours, these are just these short liturgical prayers that are spaced out to be prayed morning, noon, night, and even at midnight. The goal of these kind of divine hours is people to weave prayer into the everyday, consistent fabric of their life. And that's what Paul is doing for Timothy, reminding him that he prays for him morning, noon, night, and midnight. In other words, Paul has a prayer list. Timothy's on it, and now Timothy knows that he's on it. In his book, Confessions, Augustine talks about this season of him kind of being a prodigal son and how his mother prayed for him day and night. And this is kind of one of his quotes condensed. He says, my mother's prayers were flowing to you. This is the Lord. Her prayers entered into your presence. She wept for me more than mothers weep for the bodily deaths of their children. I could not escape her prayers. In other words, Augustine, when he reflects on his growing up, he recognizes that his mother was a mom that prayed for him night and day. And so I want to encourage you, church, or more challenge you of a couple of things. Do you have a prayer list with people's names on it? Probably begins with the people in your household. Then it works out to the people in your community group. And maybe there's some people in your workplace or in your school or in this church that are on this list. But church, I want to ask you, are you praying for people by name? Because if you're not, you ought to. And after we pray for people, let's say, hey, just prayed for you. Hey, just prayed over that. Hey, just prayed over this. On Tuesday, if you're thinking back through this talk, you might remember that says the prayer of a righteous man or woman is powerful and effective. You kind of have this opportunity to influence power and effectiveness in somebody else's life and situation through your prayers by name for them. So this is point number 3. Paul is remembering Timothy night and day in his prayers. Now, again, Paul has Timothy as pastoring this church. Paul's in prison writing this urgent personal letter, reminding Timothy of his mentorship, reminding Timothy that he prays for him night and day, and now he's going to remind Timothy of their friendship. This is verse 4. Paul says, as I remember you, as that Paul planted and has left Timothy in charge of, is this small, struggling, enduring hardships kind of a church. And here's Timothy, this young, uncertain pastor holding the reins of the church. It reminds me of this scene in Finding Nemo. Mark, keep going, keep in hardship. Something similar is happening here. In other words, Paul sees the highs of Timothy's pastoral ministry. He sees the lows of his ministry, and now he sees the weight that Timothy is carrying in Paul's absence. And he wants to remind Timothy, you just don't have a church planting you. You don't just have a prayer partner that's not actually friends with you. You've got somebody that is in this with you, cheering you on. So Timothy, keep swimming. Jordan Peterson, not exactly an early church father, says, good news with them, they are genuinely happy for you. And when you share bad news with them, is genuinely sorry for you and not secretly. You might imagine for Paul, when Timothy's struggling, thinking, I knew he couldn't do it without me. I really am a good church planting coach. Instead, Paul wants Timothy to know, I think about you all the time. I remember your tears, and I just can't wait to be beside you again and be filled with joy by being in your presence. And so, church, here's a challenge. You need friends that are close enough to your highs with you and kind of friend. Not just the text prayer partner friend. Hey, can't spend time with you, but praying for you, right? Or, hey, when you need some coaching, let me know. I'm more than happy to give you my expert counsel. But someone who's just willing just to sit in it with you. Lord, make me that kind of friend, a hospital visiting, shop visiting friend. So this is point number 3, remember your friends. Point number 4, Paul talks about a faith remembered. Paul has left Timothy in charge of this church, and Paul's writing to Timothy from prison, reminding him of his mentorship, of his prayers, of his friendship, and now he's going to remind Timothy of his sincere faith and his family's faith. This is verse 5. This is Paul speaking, I am reminded of your sincere faith, island faith that he has.